Okay, let's be real for a second. Buying a home is, without a doubt, one of the most emotionally charged and massively expensive decisions you are ever going to make in your entire life. I mean, it is so incredibly easy to walk into a beautiful open house, completely fall in love with that massive kitchen island, and then suddenly, boom, you're entirely overwhelmed by the numbers, the loan options, and just the sheer scale of the commitment. But what if we could strip away all that anxiety? What if we could actually look at the data and simplify this monumental decision into a clear, structured framework? Well, welcome to our explainer.
Today, we're going to totally demystify home affordability. And I promise you, by the time we wrap up this explainer, we are going to take that intimidating alphabet soup of real estate jargon and turn it into a really safe, manageable, and highly practical system. We're going to figure out exactly what you can truly afford without putting your financial future at risk.
So, here is our game plan for today. We'll cover 1. 3 numbers to know. 2. Your gross monthly income. 3. Beyond the basic mortgage. 4. The 30% rule. And finally 5. A tale of two buyers.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, 3 numbers to know.
Before you even think about starting your house hunt, you need to understand what I like to call the rule of 3. These are really the only 3 numbers you need to lock into your brain right now. Number 1, your monthly gross income. Number 2, your estimated monthly housing payment. And number 3, which is absolutely crucial, the relationship or the ratio between those two amounts. These 3 figures are your ultimate roadmap. They're going to keep you far, far away from the very dangerous territory of becoming house poor.
Moving right along to Section 2, your gross monthly income.
Let's strip away the jargon here. When you sit down to apply for a loan, the bank actually isn't looking at the amount that hits your checking account every 2 weeks. Your gross monthly income is your total earnings before any taxes and deductions are taken out. This is the baseline. Lenders use this larger gross figure as their starting point to figure out your affordability, not your actual take-home pay. And you know, the really good news is that your gross monthly income isn't necessarily just your standard base salary. If you're sitting there thinking, wait, what about my side hustle? Well, you're in luck. Lenders can actually look at a whole variety of income streams. Yes, that includes your regular wages, but it also includes consistent freelance work, side gigs, interest, dividends, basically any verifiable earnings. All of that feeds into your gross number and boosts your total buying power.
Which brings us to Section 3, beyond the basic mortgage.
Because let's face it, a mortgage is never just a mortgage. This is where people get caught off guard by the alphabet soup of lending. Your true monthly housing cost is a total commonly known as PITI. That stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. You really have to estimate this full combined payment, not just the principal and interest of the loan itself, if you want an accurate, long-term view of what you can actually afford to maintain.
But wait, there is even more. Depending on your down payment and the specific property you buy, you absolutely cannot forget about these 2 acronyms. PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, and HOA or homeowners association fees. These hidden costs sneak up on you and they add up incredibly fast. Honestly, if you ignore them while you're running your numbers, they can severely strain your budget once you actually get the keys and move in.
Now, when you factor in all of those housing costs we just talked about, alongside any other debts you might be carrying, like student loans or a car payment, financial planners draw a pretty hard line in the sand. They strongly advise keeping your overall monthly debt-to-income ratio at or below 43%. Pushing past that 43% mark, it just leaves you with way less room for savings, less room to pay off other debts, and a practically non-existent safety net for emergency.
Let's pivot to Section 4, the 30% rule.
So, how much of your income should actually go toward housing? Well, that relies on a decades-old benchmark. The rule is incredibly simple. Your total housing costs shouldn't eat up more than 30% of your gross monthly income. That cleanly leaves 70% of your gross income for literally everything else. Taxes, groceries, transportation, savings, and, actually living your life.
To put this into perspective and understand why this protective guardrail even exists, here's a pretty fascinating piece of history from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. They point out that back in the early 1980s, legislation actually bumped this standard up from 25% to 30%. And ever since that shift, this 30% measure has been the gold standard, the absolute norm for defining what makes housing genuinely affordable for the everyday person. However, the modern reality tells a slightly harsher story. While that 30% rule is a great benchmark, so many households today are forced to blow right past it. Recent analysis by Investopedia shows that buyers who put a solid 20% down on a median-priced home are actually stretching their budgets to the limit, spending around 34.73% of their gross income just on housing alone. It perfectly captures the modern struggle of home buying, doesn't it?
So how do you figure out exactly where you stand in all this? I want you to be totally empowered to run your own numbers. The math is actually pretty straightforward. You take your total monthly housing costs, and remember, that is the full PITI plus PMI and HOA. You divide that by your gross monthly income and then multiply by 100. That is going to spit out your exact true percentage.
All right, Section 5, A Tale of Two Buyers.
Let's ground all these abstract percentages in reality. I want you to imagine two distinct households, both living in the exact same state, Colorado. The year is 2024. They're looking at homes in similar neighborhoods, browsing the exact same real estate listings.
Now, we're going to anchor this scenario on one very concrete number, $2,600. According to Rocket Mortgage, the average monthly mortgage payment in Colorado in 2024 was roughly $2,670. Just to keep the math clean, we're going to round that down to an even $2,600 a month for both of our hypothetical households.
Let's see how this plays out side by side. Household A earns $120,000 a year, which means they have a $10,000 gross monthly income. Their $2,600 payment represents just 26% of their gross income. They are safely tucked under that 30% limit. But look at Household B. They earn $75,000 a year, or $6,250 a month. That exact same $2,600 payment eats up a massive 42% of their gross income. They are stretched incredibly thin.
Think about that. Even though both households are buying similar homes, their day-to-day realities are going to feel completely different. For Household A, life is financially manageable and secure. But Household B, they are taking on some massive financial risk and are absolutely on track to be house poor. It just goes to show you that affordability isn't really about the home's price tag at all. It is entirely about how that required monthly payment interacts with your specific income.
So, to wrap up the core takeaways from our explainer today, before you fall head over heels for a property, you absolutely must calculate the full true housing cost. Get the PITI, the PMI, the HOA fees. Do not leave anything out. Use that 30% rule, maybe not as an absolute, unbreakable law, but definitely as a severe reality check. Taking 20 minutes to sit down and run these three numbers right now is literally the best way to protect your budget and secure your financial future.
I'm going to leave you with one final, provocative question to think about before you ever step foot into another open house. If you sat down right now, pulled out your pay stubs, and ran your three numbers, what is your true affordability ratio? Honestly, the answer might just change the way you look at real estate forever. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy calculating!